The healing bullets. The autumn wind whistled through the canyons of the painted desert like a mourner's wail, carrying with it the acrid smell of gunsmoke and destiny. Doc Mathis wiped the sweat from his brow as he urged his horse forward through the deepening twilight. The medical bag bounced against his saddle horn with each step, a constant reminder of the oath he'd taken to preserve life, an oath that was about to be tested in ways he'd never imagined. 3 riders had intercepted him on his way back from treating old Widow Peterson's rheumatism. They weren't the type to take no for an answer, their eyes as cold as rattlers and their hands never far from their holsters. The leader, a scarred mountain of a man who introduced himself as Jake Cooper, made it clear that Doc Mathis's services were required at the Circle D ranch, whether he was willing or not. The Circle D had once been the pride of the territory, but that was before Wade Devil Dillon and his gang had taken it over 2 years ago. Now it was a fortress for outlaws, a place where honest folk feared to tread. The ranch's reputation had grown darker with each passing month, whispered about in saloons and around campfires as a place where men went in but didn't come out. As they crested the final ridge, the ranch sprawled below them in the gathering darkness. Lamplight flickered in the windows of the main house, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its kin. Doc Mathis's stomach churned as they approached the iron gates, adorned with the twisted D brand that had become synonymous with terror in these parts. "Your patient's inside," Cooper growled, dismounting and practically dragging the doctor from his horse. "And remember, Doc, one wrong move, and it'll be you need in medical attention." The interior of the ranch house was a strange mixture of faded elegance and outlaw practicality. Crystal decanters shared space with gun belts, and fine oriental rugs were stained with mud and blood. They led him to a back bedroom where a man lay writhing on a 4-poster bed, his face contorted in pain. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandages wrapped around his midsection. "That's Johnny, our quick draw of Mackenzie," Cooper said. "Boss wants him patched up proper-like. No mistakes." Doc Mathis's hands moved automatically, falling into the familiar routine of assessment even as his mind raced. Quick Draw Mackenzie was wanted in 3 territories for murder and train robbery. The reward on his head would feed a family for a year. As he worked to clean and examine the wound, the bedroom door opened again. The woman who entered moved like a mountain lion, all fluid grace masking lethal potential. Her dark hair was pulled back severely from a face that might have been beautiful if not for the hardness in her eyes. "I'm Natalie Dillon," she said, her voice carrying the refined accent of an Eastern education that seemed at odds with her rough surroundings. "My brother Wade wants to know how long until Johnny can ride." Before Doc Mathis could answer, Mackenzie grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "The bullet's still in there, ain't it, Doc? Feels like it's burning straight through to my soul." The doctor nodded grimly. "It needs to come out, and soon. But I'll need my full kit from my saddlebags, including my surgical instruments and certain, specific medicines." He emphasized the last word slightly, meeting Natalie's eyes. Something flickered in her expression, recognition, perhaps, or possibility. She'd been trapped in this life ever since Wade had dragged her back from her schooling in Boston, using family loyalty as chains to bind her to his criminal empire. "I'll fetch your bags myself," she said. "Can't trust the boys not to break something important." Over the next hour, Doc Mathis worked to save Mackenzie's life, all while his mind spun with possibilities. As he wrote out instructions for the patient's care, he included a carefully coded message within the medical terminology: dose every 4 hours with tincture of digitalis, sheriff posse midnight, followed by willow bark extract. Natalie's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she read the note, but her face remained impassive. She folded the paper and tucked it into her skirt pocket with steady hands that betrayed none of the trembling Doc Mathis felt in his own. The night grew longer, filled with the low moans of the wounded man and the distant sounds of the gang celebrating another successful robbery in the main room. Doc Mathis found himself relegated to a small servant's quarters, ostensibly to be nearby if Mackenzie's condition worsened. The real reason, they all knew, was to ensure he couldn't escape with knowledge of their hideout. Around midnight, Natalie appeared at his door like a ghost. "Walk with me, doctor," she said loudly enough for the guards to hear. "I need to discuss Johnny's treatment." They moved through the darkened house, Natalie leading them to the kitchen garden where the night air was heavy with the scent of sage and desert flowers. The moon cast long shadows across the adobe walls, and somewhere in the distance, an owl called. "Wade wasn't always like this," Natalie whispered, her voice barely audible above the chirp of crickets. "After our parents died, something in him broke. He started gathering men around him, each one worse than the last. I thought I could save him, help him find his way back. But now—" "There's still a chance to save yourself," Doc Mathis replied softly. "The posse will be here soon." In the confusion, "They'll kill everyone," she interrupted. "Wade, Johnny, all of them. And maybe they'll be right to do it. But I can't just—" A floorboard creaked behind them. They turned to find Wade Dillon himself standing in the doorway, his silhouette black against the lamplight from inside. The moonlight gleamed off the pearl handles of his revolvers. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice as smooth as honey over broken glass. "What's this?" "My dear sister and our esteemed physician enjoying the night air. Or perhaps—" His hand moved to his gun. "Perhaps plotting something foolish?" What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Natalie's hand disappeared into the folds of her skirt, emerging with a small derringer. Wade's draw was lightning fast, but his sister had already begun to move. 2 shots rang out almost simultaneously. Wade staggered, a look of disbelief crossing his face as he looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest. His gun slipped from nerveless fingers as he collapsed. Natalie stood frozen, the derringer still smoking in her hand, as her brother's blood soaked into the thirsty desert soil. The shots brought the gang running, but they arrived to find a very different scene than they'd expected. The night exploded into chaos as the sheriff's posse, right on schedule, burst through the gates. In the confusion of gunfire and shouting, Doc Mathis felt Natalie's hand slip into his. "Run," she whispered. "While they're distracted. There's horses ready behind the barn." They fled into the night, the sounds of the gunfight fading behind them. The desert stretched endless and dark before them, promising either salvation or damnation. As they rode, Doc Mathis couldn't help but think about the oath he'd taken to do no harm. Sometimes, he realized, saving a life meant ending another. Sometimes healing meant cutting away the rot to save what remained. Dawn found them many miles away, their horses exhausted but still moving. They stopped to water the animals at a small spring, and Natalie finally broke the long silence. "I've been practicing medicine myself, you know," she said quietly. "Reading every book I could find, learning from the ranch hands' injuries. Maybe you could use an apprentice?" Doc Mathis looked at this woman who had lost everything and gained her freedom in a single night. He saw in her eyes not the hardness of before, but something new, hope, perhaps, or the chance for redemption. "Every good doctor needs a partner," he said, offering her a tired smile. "Especially out here in the territories." The sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Behind them, the Circle D ranch was probably still smoking, its reign of terror ended. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. They mounted up and rode on, leaving the past behind with the rising dust of their horses' hooves. In the years that followed, folks would sometimes talk about the lady doctor who rode with Mason Mathis, treating everything from gunshot wounds to prairie fever. They said she had the steadiest hands this side of the Mississippi and a heart as big as the territory itself. But if anyone recognized her as Wade Dillon's sister, they never mentioned it. Out here in the West, after all, everyone deserved a chance to rewrite their story. The old-timers in the saloons would tell you that medicine and gunsmoke don't mix, that healing and killing are as different as day and night. But Doc Mathis knew better. Sometimes the medicine that saves you comes in strange bottles, and sometimes redemption wears a healer's face. In the end, it's not about the oath you take, but the lives you touch and the choices you make when the devil himself is breathing down your neck. They say you can still see their campfire some nights, out there in the vastness of the territory, where the desert meets the sky. 2 figures bent over medical books, sharing knowledge and purpose, their past as distant as the stars above. And if you listen carefully, you might hear the wind whisper their story, a tale of healing and harm, of family and freedom, of a prescription that saved more than just one life on that fateful night at the Circle D Ranch. Some folks call it luck, others call it destiny. But in the end, it was nothing more than the simple truth that every doctor knows: sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't found in any bottle or bag, but in the courage to do what's right, even when every hand is turned against you. And that's the kind of medicine that never runs dry, no matter how long the trail or dark the night. The end. Join the adventure with the Western Echoes, Cowboy Tales Unleashed. If you're loving our cowboy stories and captivating tales, don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button to stay updated on all our future posts. Saddle up and ride along with us.